Well, it's straight up noon here on December the 9th, 2024. We have a heck of a program for you today. The Lunch and Learn is brought to you in a partnership with the Arkansas Department of Labor and Licensing HVACR program, as well as the Arkansas HVACR Association. It's this partnership that gets this information out here to all of us that we need to know, and I think today is going to be an especially informative day. Our subject may be totally new to some of you. Regulators, venting, and valves on gas and propane furnaces. The topic reaches over to plumbers, but we kind of need to know what's going on there too, so we can look at a system and see whether or not it's being done correctly before we attach ourselves to it. So stay to the very end. Tony's going to be a big help to us on the HVACR side of the world. Tony Woodard, Mr. Chief Inspector for the state, welcome to another Lunch and Learn.
Good to be with you again, Tom.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, sir, as an OGO guy, I don't know much about gas, so I'm anxious to listen and learn to you today.
Yeah,
See,
we've got some photos, and we'll kind of put an eyebrow on my head, and I had to go back and realize this was starting to take place, and thought it was something that we needed to address, like you said, for the contractors to understand in these mechanical rooms. Should that be there? Should it not be there? If it is going to be there, what's the proper way to put it there? So that's where we're going to go over that today.
So we're going to deal with the National Fuel Gas Code, Section 4, and we're going to start off with just some real basic things. So stay tuned to this because we're going to get into the real meat of it in a little bit, but we got to start off with the piping that's used.
Right, and this is confusing. So we have this section, and we got a 410 section, 4.3. So this would be picture your point of delivery, and you're coming outside and you're coming up. So this gets specific with the STM about the sunlight and the brittifying of the pipe. If that's going to be exposed, that's going to go to that. That gives you why there are certain coatings and certain type of the pipe, and then they color code it. Some you'll have yellow and you'll have black. They'll do the same with our CSST. Black is our arc fault, so it's arc fault protected. Yellow is your standard, and then they have the sun protection. Like for those guys that get do electrical work and all that, we have Schedule 80 that's exposed in the sun elements. That's where this is explaining as well.
I got you. Well, here's just an example of how the pipe will be labeled. And again, a lot of this is on the plumber side of the world, isn't it?
It is. It is on the plumber side. Most of our guys do not, unless we have a few now. I'd say we got 36 Class A holders that still have the gas fitters license and still run gas piping. They might not do any other plumbing, but they do run gas piping. And they would be more familiar with it, especially with the CSST manifold systems. But you're right. This is the basically a sample, and it's pretty simple. And I want you to pay close attention to the middle there. Use for fuel gas. It clearly will tell you, no matter what part, it doesn't matter if it's an inlet, if it's a supply, if it is a vent, if it is going to handle gas, it must be stated gas. And that's why I'm glad you put that in there.
Yeah.
And it will be labeled clearly.
Very interesting. Okay. Plastic pipe and tubing must never be installed in or under a building.
Right. That's where they get in. You've got your approved type of piping for driveways, areas like this. You got your burial depth, your type of piping, and so forth. You don't want it to be crushed or caved. That's why we don't use CSST or tube plastic like outside for vehicular crush. That's why you'll see it on the outside of your little convenience store. That's all hard pipe, and protected and things like that.
Yeah. Well, if they're using CSST, corrugated stainless steel tubing, how to use it inside a building.
Yes, and this is going to be, you do have your Bible of the fuel gas code that tells you exactly, especially the new International Fuel Gas Code commentary. The commentary is outstanding. It is a pictorial book as well as the code, but it will walk you through with the pictures and show you the manufacturer's instructions of the CSST. That's critical because CSST can only be installed per its manufacturer's instruction. How much give it has to have as a snake, how it's supported, what is its size. They have different sizing than the standard size. It's got certain sizes for the amount of ratio BTU, how you run. A lot of this is a parallel run instead of a branch length method run where we used to feed with a 2-inch. As we drop off 100 or 50,000, we would downsize and go. This is totally different. This is run to a manifold in what's called a parallel run. And it can only be installed per the manufacturer's instructions.
Well, again, what we're looking at here is a slide that's really only going to be used by somebody that is a plumber. Isn't that right?
We'll talk in January. We will. And we will talk in February. So,
okay.
Stay tuned to February.
Well, this is kind of an aside. As I was looking into all of this, I was going through our Arkansas fuel gas code and plumbers, and it seemed like years ago it was easier to get a gas fitter's license than it is today. You just can't hardly get one today.
They gave this old boy one, so hell,
but
if I could get one, anybody could.
That was a long time ago, though, Tony.
Yes, sir. It was.
It's almost an apprenticeship type program if you're going to get one now.
Yes, sir. It is. It is. I mean, all you had to do was operate an ignorant spoon. And for the newcomers coming on the show today, if you don't know what an ignorant spoon is, that is a shovel. So that's what that is. So you had to do your hours with that, and once you did, you were good.
I'm glad you told me. Here's the various kinds of metallic piping that might be used.
Correct, and it breaks it down. This is in our plumbing book. It's in our fuel gas book. It's in the mechanical. It's approved ASTM ratings that have been sent out. They've done all the ASTM for those that. If this sounds foreign to you, the American Society testing material, that's everything we deal with from fire, life safety, and everything. That's who gives you the rating that this product is approved and can be used for this, basically.
I got you. Some examples again of how they may manifold a system in a building.
Yes, and there's a good point to that, to where if you don't back that up, and if you go out and you've got it on one side of the wall and you're on the other, and if you're out there just cranking down, you're twisting that thing on the inside. And they got, they give nice little pictures of how you back your wrench up, how you back your fittings up, how you protect it so you don't twist it. It's almost like flare fitting, a lot of it. When we had our flaring tools, when the guys that do refrigeration and we go back, we had flaring tools, and the ductless mini split world. You're doing that with all your fittings and going on.
I guess for the most part, if we look at this picture there on the left where we're showing that manifold, the plumber is going to take care of that, and he's going to get us our pipe within about 6 feet of our furnace. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And at that point, we become very concerned.
Yes, they'll put that tree manifold. It might be 15 feet over there, but they will run one over. And I think when we get further in the slide, I'll walk through some pictures we got.
Okay.
But we'll get it. And this is, that's what we typically see. Now, this is a mock-up, so it's actually building a box for the IFGC. But this is what we typically see. You'll have your point of delivery coming at the bottom in your inlet right there. Your shut-off valve, you're dealing and going out parallel, going off to its each appliance.
Gotcha. And we'll kind of move through here quickly to get over to some things that we're probably more interested in. You got pressure regulators. We kind of need to stop and talk about that because there's going to be a couple of kinds of them.
There are non-venting regulators that are specifically used. A lot of times we use them in grocery stores. They came about because in the grocery stores, for the gray head folks sitting here listening to this, the duct furnaces back in most grocery stores above the air conditioning system, the walk-in cooler box, the old boxes sitting there, we used to duct that and put an inline duct furnace, but we had to have high gas because a lot of these were 500,000 BTU. Might put one or two over there, but because you couldn't hang a unit duct heater like we did in a gym. Well, those would have inside regulators, and they made some that were non-purging and some that were purging. now we're getting into areas that don't have gas, and we're having to use propane, and the propane systems, when we're going to more than one appliances, we're having to beef that up a little bit. And now we're having to create a regulator up inside the structure. And you got to be careful when you do that. You've got to
Okay.
make sure you have the correct one. That's
Well,
a good photo of your standard half-inch. Basically, this would be your standard half-inch. You're going to 3 little appliances, 4 little appliances there. You're not going to many. You can, you're bringing it in there, 75,000 BTUs maybe. Well, they're showing a boiler there. So in that picture, in a hot water, that's a little different. But does it have the next slide? Does it have
here's the internal.
that one, that internal one? Here's what you're seeing with the CSST going parallel to all the fuel fired appliances is in the home, and then they're coming out, and then you go into that regulator, and your arrow there is pointing, which most of the ones they use is the venting regulator. It's, of course, the less expensive regulator, and you've got a prop. Now, what created me to do this, I run across 4 of these in a closed envelope foam structure. Not a good idea. And if you do put it up there, you got to make dang sure it's sized properly. It's going to vent properly. It's going to have the length of the vent per the manufacturing of the vent, because some of them say 15 foot, some say 18. And I'm going to show you they went way too far with their pipe. They went wrong pipe. You got to go to a terminating device. You don't want ice, snow, water, anything that can build up in this vent. It could open that diaphragm, and now we got gas going into a closed cell. Where's it going to dissipate at? It's not in a ventilated attic. That's a bad situation.
Yeah, I'm very confused how you would have a non-venting unit,
Yeah.
or venting unit and not run it outside, especially if you've got
or what we're
encapsulated
going to see in
house.
the slide, they carried it over to, in the one we're going to show where they carried it to the eave, it was a ventilated house. It wasn't, but it was on the eave, which the air runs inward back into the house to go to the which is better than the closed concealed one, closed cell one, but still improper.
Let's see, we've got a slide here. How do they work? Get into this one if you would, please, because I'm still a tad confused about how these things work.
Okay, they've got little rubber diaphragms on there, and that pressure, it's basically a regulator like your water regulator. Any regulator, you adjust that to flow the volume and amount of gas. When it's in full operation, it's different than when it's throttling. Okay, so if you don't have a large demand, then you got to keep pressure, keep the volume up. Well, if you have the vent on it, and these vents, when you're not utilizing, it's to open up, equalize out, let that get out of the building. When you don't do that right, we're not getting the right amount of pressure on that thing. That diaphragm can stay open. That's not good. And especially if it will, we got to make sure that thing vents to the exterior of the building. We don't want a gas situation build up where we have an explosive situation. So they work off, basically it's a plunger, if you can picture that in your head.
So in essence, it's releasing natural gas or propane.
Correct.
And now the question is, where are you going to release that to?
Correct. And the product you're releasing it in, is it approved to be going through that product?
Yeah. Here's the picture of the venting regulator.
Yeah, and that picture is okay. So if you were to actually use one that's wide open like that, dirt daubers, insects, they can get in there, clog that up. If you read the fuel gas commentary, they even talk about that, insects and things like that. Yeah. That's why they got on back a few slides back at the beginning, when you had the 2 photos, the one to the right was actually the new ventilator. It's the terminating device that lets that out, closes back. It's almost like your frost-free plug that you're starting to see people screw on their faucet for code. It allows it to breathe. It's kind of like that is what it is.
Huh. Well, again, let me show my ignorance. Is it frequent that we have to be able to vent that gas? I mean, is the pressure so unstable that we need to do that?
It's on the demand of how it's on the demand of the unit being move. I mean, if it's not being utilized much, so in the summertime we have water heater or whatever, but then and again, propane tanks are a little different than when we have natural gas systems. All of us, that when it gets to 10 degrees, next thing you know, the gas company's out there going to the main line having to boost up because what happened? Everybody sucked the fan dry. Well, now you got your propane tank over there. You're relying on the propane company that you're using to be knowledgeable to know what's my manifold, what's my load. If I got my outside regulator to this one set proper, things. I know this is getting into the plumbing world, but I want everybody to understand it. You know, we're all in the same boat, really, in the construction world. So, and since we're getting into the capsulated houses, that's where it concerned me the most. When you got a ventilated attic, you got things breathing and moving in and out. But when we put everything in a tight envelope, it's tight. We need to do that proper.
Okay, here's another picture of where the pipe. In this case, it looks like there's PEX.
This was, and I want you to pay close attention to potable water. And we talked about that, and you showed it says, this is what they use to vent these regulators with. So then I made multiple stops at multiple plumbing distributors and said, guys, do you have the product that's approved for the? Yes, they do. They brought some up to the counter. It is a 3/8 approved CSS. It is an approved gas product to vent this with. I found 4 in a row that they're using this plumbing PEX because that's what they had on their truck that was 3/8 to hook up to that regulator. Not approved. Failed. Not approved to be putting on the vent regulator. It must state simply gas. And then you'll know you'll have your approved product to vent that out with.
Well, now, since this is sort of on the plumbing side of the world, but it affects us, who inspects this?
It would be the inspectors that, again, in February, I'm hoping we bring that program back. I had 308, and I have about, I'd say 88 that, and I bet there's some zooming in here that self-educate themselves. They stay involved. They stay educated. But this would be, the Lunch and Learns have really, really helped keep them up to date with things. But this would be the inspectors that would catch this, that would in turn. But here's what's not happening. We are on a continuing education on the HVAC world now. Once you achieve your master plumber license, it's up to you to get continuing education because the health department is not providing continuing education on the fuel gas code to master plumber.
I'm sorry.
I'm stating the facts.
So we know that when you're a master plumber, you'll never need to learn anything again because the world never changes for you.
I'm so stupid every day I wake up. I tell you, I get 2 cups of coffee in and go, wow. I mean, I have to learn something every day or I'm so.
I hear you. Okay, here's a good picture of this internal regulator that we were talking about there.
That's it. This is the house. Okay, there's 3. This was actually in a ventilated attic. It had tech shield with ridge vent, and they carried this improper PEX, but they carried it too far. Manufacturer's instructions of the regulator tell you how far that can be. Then they carried it and just kind of looped it around, and it hung out in the eave. It didn't never terminate. So there's a couple of issues there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just shaking my head as to how complicated the world can be. Here's another picture of it.
Yep. Another picture. Actually, this was another house they did. This was on another line, but it's the same. These houses were in the same area, and I think it's the same plumbing company that were doing it.
Looks like they have a manifold there because I'm looking at 3 or 4 CCSTs.
Yep. And they're going. Now, they double valved. If you'll pay attention, they double valve back here and there. And, you could shut that off and isolate that, keep air and all that, and then they can move and change out. This one on this side's correct, but go ahead.
Okay. All right.
Here's one of the capsulated houses. So it's kind of hard to see this, but as you're first coming in, right there it is to your left. It's sitting up there, and right there. And this one just goes down and goes a little ways and hangs out over there in encapsulated structure. Yeah, this is going over here.
So
Yeah,
I put on there that venting hole pipe to the outside. Does it not actually go to the outside?
it goes over there and hangs out to the eave.
Ah,
See it.
ah,
It's got to go to a terminating device that's approved for that, with the approved gas material for the vent as well.
I'm kind of laughing because I know how to the extreme that we go to make sure that people vent a bathroom vent correctly, for example, or a dryer correctly. And yet this wasn't caught and it was just stuck over into a soffit. My goodness, that's a lot worse than a bathroom vent.
Now, if we have any plumbing inspectors watching, if the now, I would think they would get it. You know, I do know that the Department of Health does hold annual training for them. And I know that they've been doing some of the fuel gas code. And if they touched on this, I would like for them to reach back out to me, the inspector, because this needs to be addressed.
All right.
Okay, here's another ventilated attic, another situation. And you can see it's going, and if you look down in the bottom, that unit is vertical, sitting on its pumps. They got a pan, and then their CSST right under your red area is coming down and going. You see that the installation, the heat and air company put the hard pipe out, put their 90, put their CSST,
right here,
their flex connector to a valve. They put the shutoff valve, and it's sitting in the pan right there. Now, it will get hooked up eventually. I don't know if the pipe was there and they didn't want to hook it up, but legally they can hook that up to the proper deal. But, you know, it is anchored there to where they can put their fitting and drill down. Maybe they're just leaving it for the plumber to do that and bouncing. Another thing is so where I'm showing you this for is CSST, where you might have a 3/4 inch black gas pipe, CSST might be a little smaller with propane. That's because that's sized strictly by their instructions of how you run their product. And I had a guy ask me what was the difference between yellow and black. The black is the ARC fault approved CSST, where the yellow is not.
I see. Well,
I know I've gone fast. I've been trying to get it in the time frame.
That's fine. I realize this doesn't have anything to do with the gas, but I'm looking at this refrigerant line here. Boy, that sure looks like that has been crimped when they turned it to go over to the left there.
And that's a good point you show. And you see that one strap, which the International Mechanical Code, this used to have to be supported every 6 feet. Now they can go as far as 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I had a guy ask me, he said, do you count the 8 foot from the point where it's welded to where it makes a turn and goes up? And I said, I absolutely do, for the fact the weight of that copper and that pushing down on that, and if you go back and look, and he goes, well, we never thought. I said, it is. That weight is accounted for that. You're getting out there with that. Now, another support over here, but that where it looks like it's kinked, would have been a good support. Because that's a lot of weight. That little old liquid is just sitting there and pushing down on that evaporator.
Mm-hmm.
But that does look like it might have a little kink in it there.
Here's another picture. It's the same thing. We won't waste any time on that. You've already shown that already. I didn't know what we were looking at here.
This is another foamed house. These two were in the same, and I mean, I think it was the same builder because it's almost identical like the other one. Attic, same entrance to the attic. I'm exactly 6 foot, and if I kept my back to that deal, I could shimmy in there.
Mm-hmm.
But you're really, for everybody to know, to get that 50-foot run, you're supposed to maintain that 6 foot of unobstructed.
Yeah.
So that's kind of getting far out there, but technically, if I brought my tape measure and went all the way up there, that's 6 foot. But the 6 foot unobstructed, really, you got to picture a 22. You got your 2 foot wide. You got to go all the way up with that. So this was some other dresses, but this is another one that had one of these purging regulators that just kind of hung out there. And it caught me off guard that this was happening so much. So that's why I decided to do a lunch and learn with it.
Here's basically a whole list of shut-off valves. I don't know how deep you want to get into it. The one thing I wanted to make note of was the very last one, that 409.5.1.1, where it says the shut-off valve will be within 6 feet, which is the same distance that our guys can run that CSST, right?
Very good point, and that's a good learning thing for the HVAC guys. And our code changed. Used to on a furnace and a package unit RTU, 3 foot was a max. Well, it backed up to 6 foot. So now carry you a 6-footer on your truck. That's where she's got to be. You got to come out with your hard pipe, and that's a very good point. It does, and it's got to be ready accessible, meaning ready accessible. And the definitions is you walk up with no tools. You don't have to get back behind the furnace. Really, it's not concealed. It's right there, ready accessible.
Which you just made a good point, and that is you're talking about the hard pipe going through the cabinet of the furnace. So that's got to be hard pipe, and then you can put your CSST connected to that. Did I get that right?
Yeah, your gas flex correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Tony, it's definitely been a different topic than I'm accustomed to. I'm certainly glad we get to cover this, though. If folks have got any questions or compliments or complaints about the Lunch and Learns, be sure to call in at 682-9201. Talk to Tony. Call me at 501-487-8655. I'll do what I can to share with Tony any comments that I hear. The idea is that this is a partnership, whether you are carrying a tool bag in the field, running a big business, or your inspector in the field. Consumers are better off when we work together. So let's work together and share with each other our thoughts. Tony, I guess we crank it up again on Monday, January the 13th, which is the second Monday of the year.
Right. And as of right now, I don't have a topic. If somebody's got one, they want to email you or me about it, we'll get on it. I do need a couple of weeks to get prepared to get it going so I can get it to time as well. So I'll find something if somebody doesn't send me something. But
one of the things I was kind of looking at today was what it takes to get a license to do HVAC work in the state of Arkansas. And it's pretty simple, but I hear a lot of guys ask that kind of questions. We can think about that if we don't have anything else to do. Tony, I appreciate you. Tell Lindsay and all the guys over there how much we appreciate them. I know this is an important thing to our industry, and we appreciate the fact that they let it happen and for all the time you invest in it. Until January the 13th, have a great holiday.
Have a safe holiday, everybody. Thank you again, Tom.